You know, the truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. Just, you, just fucking hell. So after yesterday's video, I said to myself, Self, how the hell did all this start? And I was pleasantly surprised. So, history time. And I'm using pleasantly pretty loosely. Quick bit of backstory. The Soviet Union fell back in 1991, after which the CIS was formed. This is the Commonwealth of Independent States. You see, as the Soviet Union degraded, Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus signed the Belovezia Accords. Essentially, it was taking and dividing up the Soviet Union into independent countries, one of them being Ukraine. Now, part of these accords was that should any one of these countries default, and by default I mean the inability to act as a sovereign nation, lose leadership, financial problems, whatever it may be, that country would then default back to being part of Russia. Listen, I'm not saying any of this is right, I'm just saying it happened. So how does this fit into everything that's going on? Well, we've all heard about Crimea. Crimea is a small peninsula to the south of Ukraine that borders Russia and the Black Sea. It was annexed by Russia in 2014. Now that's where this kind of all started. So it's generally believed that Crimea is part of Ukraine, so therefore Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's how this all started, right? I mean, that's it. Big bad Russia invaded Ukraine, right? That should be cut and dry, right? No, that's not how it works. You see, at the time, Crimea was actually an independent country. It was known as the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. It was kind of like an administrative state of Ukraine. However, it's its own independent country, which falls under the CIS, which means should the country default, it goes back to Russia, which is exactly what happened. One day, all of the government, politicians, leaders just up and fucking left. Stood up one day and is like, peace bitches, I'm out. Which technically made the country default because it can no longer protect its sovereignty. Therefore, because it's an independent country and it can no longer protect its sovereignty, according to Belovezia Accords, it goes back to Russia, which is what happened. Except Ukraine didn't want to give it up. They said technically it's part of Ukraine, which is true. But it was an independent country that fucking defaulted. Them's the rules. So how does that lead to the current war? See, during this time on the down low, Zelensky opened up negotiations with NATO. Started texting them like a side piece there, you know? Hey, baby, I want to be part of NATO. Well, that's okay. We'd love to have you. I mean, some bullshit is what it is. So this goes on for a little bit, and all of a sudden, Putin catches wind of this. He's sitting there like, this is not how this works. We had an agreement, a treaty. Now, I can't find any record of it, but I would imagine that Putin reached out to Zelensky and said something along the lines of, so, this is not how the CIS works. This is how the CIS works. Fucking stop now. But Zelensky kept having meetings with NATO. So Putin created his own meeting with NATO. Walked in there and said, look, this is not how the CIS works. We have our own independent treaty. Stop. To which NATO responded, okay, no, and you can't make us. Now, I'm paraphrasing here, but I can imagine Russia said something like, fucking bet. You see, I will turn that country into beaded glass before I ever give it to you. And it was at this point NATO should have been like, well, that's inconvenient, so, well, on to plan B here. But they didn't. They doubled down and continued talking with Zelensky. This is why Zelensky says he'll step down if they join NATO, because then NATO would defend them against Russia. Which is why nobody sent troops over there, because that's a huge treaty violation. So as expected, Russia said stop doing this, and Ukraine said we're not going to stop doing this, and so Putin said fine, have it your way, you fucked around, now it's time to find out. And here we are. See, here's the problem though. Back in the 90s, we told Ukraine to give up their nuclear weapons and we'll protect them. Which makes this a huge gray area. Because technically speaking, Russia never invaded Ukraine. It followed the CIS and the Belovezia Accords and took back a defaulted, independent, autonomous state that couldn't protect their sovereignty. Ukraine didn't see it that way. Now here's the Jesus rollerblading Christ of all of this. Technically, by backing Ukraine during all of this, we've committed an act of war against Russia. We should have never been backing them to begin with, because Ukraine didn't have the ability to defend against Russia until they got our weaponry and money. Then the playing field was level. I mean, looking at it this way, Russia is ignoring and sweeping the fact that Biden actually made a declaration of war, which again, can't be done by a president, can only be done by Congress. So Biden unilaterally created an act of war against Russia by backing Ukraine without the approval of Congress. This is one of those things I really wished I wouldn't have looked into, because the truth is so much worse. Which again, this is the shit that starts world wars. And there's no politics here, and I'm not trying to fearmonger anybody. I'm just telling the truth as it is. This is all verifiable. You can look it up. That's how I found it. I mean, this puts a lot of things into perspective. And with that being said, thanks for watching. The best way to support me is to like, comment, or share on these videos. And be nice, be kind, be patient.